Do tiny houses pay for themselves? Yes. Just kidding, let's dive into this for a little bit. One big thing I've heard over and over again, or one question I've heard, is that do tiny houses appreciate in value? And that's kind of an interesting thing, because I do look at tiny houses as an investment, but not really what you paid for and what you sold it for. I think it's more so for the long term. In other words, each day, week, month, year that you live in a tiny house, your investment for the purchase of a tiny house is paying more, getting closer and closer to paying for itself. One interesting fact, the average tiny house that sold on tinyhouselistings.com last year in 2017 had about 16% of the sticker price of the average house that was sold in the United States in 2017. Now granted, those typical homes that were sold in the United States, pretty much all of them had land that came with them, and tiny houses for the most part do not have land. But even if you went out and bought yourself a cheap piece of land where tiny houses are allowed, or you lease land for someone like a backyard or a farm, or you even moved into a mobile home trailer park or an RV park, even then, if that was the case, your tiny house would still pay for itself over the long haul. I swear I've been wanting to do this for a long time. I want to build an online calculator on the tiny house website, tiny house listings website, where you can scroll and like put in your information for yourself and like your current costs, and then like what it would be if you lived in a tiny house. Then it would show you how quickly it would pay off. Your tiny house would pay itself off. But in the meantime, maybe you can just write this down or just imagine in your head, what are your current expenses that you pay on insurance, taxes, rent, electricity, water, trash, all those things, right? Now slash that to a fraction of what it is now. And take that savings, just come up with a number, 60%, 70%, because that's probably what you're gonna pay if you look at the recurring expenses that are associated with a traditional house and with a tiny house. Now multiply that times 12. How much you save in a month times 12. That's how much you'd save in a year. Now multiply that times 10, because a good tiny house is built to last 10 years, much longer than that, hopefully, because they're built just like regular houses. Now take that amount. How much did you pay for your tiny house, and how much have you saved over the course of, say, 10 years? Chances are the amount of money that you've saved of living in that tiny house over that course of time paid for your tiny house. Now there's different degrees, different amounts of time that it'll take depending on if you bought a cheap piece of land yourself, if you're paying a monthly amount for it to stay on the land or whatnot. Even still, eventually that tiny house is going to pay for itself. Now, when you're done with your tiny house, if you've taken good care of it, you can sell it for what you paid for or close to it. And if you decide not to get rid of your tiny house, any month after your investment has paid for itself, it's just money in your pocket. And you know, the funny thing is, after talking to so many people who bought a tiny house and their main goal was to pay the tiny house off if they finance it, it was like a snowball effect. They found more ways to make extra money, quicker ways to pay it off. And you got to think, if you have a $200,000, $300,000 loan, whatever more, the amount of interest that you're paying is far greater than a $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 loan that you would pay for a tiny house. So over the course of the time that you're paying your tiny house off, you're paying way less interest. So yes, given that you're willing to stay and live in your tiny house for an extended amount of time, tiny houses do pay for themselves. Thanks for watching. See you on the next video.